Hi guys, this is Kendra with True Us TV and I'm back with another video. I wanted to read this book that is alleged. Chronicles. Now, if I don't read something right, it's because I can't read. I can't fully read it. And so we're going to read about this explorer, this chronologer. I don't know how to say it. Basically, he writes chronicles. And his name is Gomez Enos D. as whatever. Okay, you can see. All right, we're going to read about him because we want to see if he really was in Africa like they said, right? So we're going to read about this Portuguese chronicler. I don't know how to say that. I tried to say it so many times, but he basically write chronicles. He write books, and his exploration, y'all. All right? So we're going to read. We're going to read and we're going to go through this because we got some questions to ask if this man was truly in allegedly Africa, right? In Guinea, however you say that, as they claim he was. We're going to see the truth. Now, this is what he reads at the beginning, right? Because let's just read. On the next day, which was the 8th of the month of August, were very early in the morning, by reason of the heat, seamen began to make ready their boats, and to take out those captives and carry them on shore, as they were commanded. And these placed all together in that field were a marvelous sight. From amongst them were some white enough. Okay, fair doesn't mean anything but pretty, but they had white people. Remember, just because somebody's white don't mean they Slavic. So understand that when we talk about white, doesn't mean they Slavic. White people were never European, none of that stuff. Get it out your mind. Them peons of them Slavic races, that's them. But being white can mean that they were albino, right? White. Okay, here we go. White enough, right? Fair to look upon, meaning that they were pretty. Didn't have nothing to do with white, meaning that they look good. So they white enough and they look good. Were good to look upon. That's what fair means, pretty. And well proportionate. They had nice proportioned bodies. Others were less like mulattoes. So some of them look mixed race, right? Meaning that they could have been light-skinned black folk, right? Others, again, were as black as Ethiopians. Why not black like Ghanaians or Africans, right? Because they're in Africa. That's what you're alleging. That don't make sense for you to say they black like Ethiopians. They're black like the peoples of Africa. Why not just say that? Or like they're all other parts. All right, but we don't want to speculate even just using that. Then they go as and so ugly, both in features and in body. As almost to appear to those who saw them the image of a lower hemisphere. Now, I don't know the image of a lower hemisphere. Now, both of my stuff ain't working, so I'll try to get my phone to work too so I can Google certain things, but my phone and stuff be acting silly. Hold on. All right, where were we? And place in the field, blah, 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 blah. White like mulattoes, others as black as the Ethiopians, Ethiops, and so ugly, blah, blah, blah. Yep. And it says, to those who saw them, right? Now, these little quotation marks, I'm going to, for reasons of believing that this was an add-on, right? And not naturally what this book read, some of this stuff is added. So, and you're going to be able to tell that they added this in. I'm going to read it without this. Okay, so it goes, others, again, were as black as Ethiops, and so ugly, both in as almost to appear, okay, to those who saw them. That's an add-on. Nobody needed that. As almost to appear, right? Why are they putting you to those who saw them? We didn't need that. We already understood it when he said how they look. He gave a depiction. They look like the Ethiop people. And if they're allegedly in Africa, wouldn't that make sense? Okay, as almost to appear. And like I said, I'm going to leave out to those who saw. I'm not going to put that because that's an add-on. As almost to appear the images of a lower hemisphere, right? An image of a lowest hemisphere. So I Googled to myself, what countries are in the lowest hemisphere? What countries are in the lowest hemisphere? And they said Australia, Antarctica, New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Indonesia, Angola, and oops, well, I could click out of there. Oops, somebody, look at that. All right, right, and so it also gives you countries that have part in the southern hemisphere. I didn't ask any of that. At the lowest hemisphere. Oh, okay. Well, they're letting you know. So Kenya, Somalia, Tanzania, Ecuador, Equilateral Guinea, okay, has the island Guinea, whatever that's supposed to be in Africa, Fiji, Uganda, the Republic of Congo, Gabon, okay? So we're going to go back to our read. Okay, so it says almost to appear, the images of a lower hemisphere. So it said these pieces. So basically, let's read what it's really saying, right? And even when they put to those who saw them, they looked like they were people of Ethiopia or those in the lower hemisphere, meaning parts of that they look to be like them, right? But why would they need to look to be like them if they're in the country? They would look like an Ethiopian. They would look like somebody from Kenya. You get what I mean? They would be like, why would you say that as if you were expecting them to look, not like those people? You get what I mean? Like, he's speaking like he not in Africa. That's all I'm saying. He's speaking like he not in Africa because he's talking about a people group. And he's talking like they look like the people in Africa. Because remember, at one point, Africa was called Ethiopia. That's all I'm saying. And why would he, and I'm talking about the whole continent or country, whatever they call themselves, at one point was the whole continent or country it was named Ethiopia, right? So why would you be expecting them to look any different? You get what I mean? But anyway, I digress. Let's go on. He's about the heart. Okay, so anyway, but what heart could be so hard as to not be pierced? He's talking about the feelings to see the company. Some kept their heads. A lot of them were lamenting. They were groaning very dorsally, looking up heights of heaven, fixing their eyes upon it and crying out loud, as if help of Father of nature. Others stuck their faces with palms of their hands, throwing themselves at the full length upon the ground. Others made lamentation. All right, so he's just talking about them being grieved of something. Something is transpiring, right? But an increase of suffering still more. There now arrived those who could charge of the division of the captives and who began to separate one from another. So right now, they're taking these Portuguese are taking these people, children and stuff, and they're lamenting as a result. And it says, "O powerful fortune, that with thy wheels does their undo." I'm not about to read all that. Y'all can decide to. All right. The captives were misery, separated. Okay. All right. So we're trying to read where they say they're in Africa, right? Where this is supposed to be allegedly Africa and not America. Because the Portuguese were alleged to enslave, right, the American Indian and ship them to Cape Verde in Sierra Leone. But they're trying to say, no, the Portuguese were bringing Africans to Africa from America. Make that make sense? Or listen, it just don't add up. But let's keep going. Troublesomely, they finished the partition. For beside the toil they had with the captives, the field was quite full of people, both from the town. Now they put this logos. They put this Lagos. They put that. They put this, okay? And you could tell this is an add-on because we're going to read it without putting Lagos there. So imagine if Lagos wasn't there, and let's read it. Okay, so it says, and so troublesome they finished the partition, for besides the toil they had with the captives, right? So the people that they captured, the people that they captured, the field was quite full of people, both from the town and from the surrounding villages and districts. You see how Logos was an add-on? They didn't have to tell us Logos. There was no need. They're letting you know from both from the town, and they added Lagos, both from the town Logos and from the surrounding villages. No, that was an add-on. Both from the town and from the surrounding villages and districts, who for the day gave rest to their hands, and which lay their power to get their living for the sole purpose of beholding this novelty. And with what they saw, while some were weeping, others separating the captive, they caused much a tumult, greatly to confuse those who direct the partition. All right? So now we're going to go into this. Dennis Diaz went to the land of Negroes. Now we're going to talk about this. This is a chapter book. Mind you, we're going to go back up to the top. This was circa 1450. Right? So we're going to punch holes in certain things that they said as well. Because if this book was written in 14, this voyage, right, was written in the 1400s, right, or made from 1400s, he would have never called anybody a Negro. Why? Let me tell you why. Let me show you why better than I could tell you. Because the word Negro, let's see if they'll give it to us. No. Portuguese start saying African, they just make shit up. When did the term Negro originate? The term Negro originated in the 1550, derived from Spanish or Portuguese words meaning black, and initially was used to describe people of African descent. That's just conjecture, and they just say that. While terms was widely used, especially in the 18th century and late 1960s, fell out of favor in some consider it outdated and offensive, whatever. All this is conjecture. But we got originated in 1540s. So if this was originated in 1540s, and now you got this man's voyage in 1449, calling these people Negroes, there's a problem. There's a problem, because that word wasn't even around then. You see what I mean? 1450s, right, is the conquest of Guinea. In the 1450s, they didn't call nobody no Negro. It wasn't until the 1550s they were called Negro. There's already a discrepancy. I'm just letting you know, where there's one lie, there's several more. But when the Negroes saw that those ships, okay, let's see. All right, so, okay, and after reasoning thus concerned the novelty, four of them bold enough to inform themselves concerning this doubt, right? Where were we? We were where they said Negroes. But when the Negroes saw those in the ships were men, they had haste to flee as best they could. And though the caravel followed after them, the want of sufficient wind prevented their capture. So they couldn't get captured because of the wind. And they made this up right here. Don't take this. This was an add-on, Portuguese, because they're not speaking of the Portuguese. Let me read it without what they put. And as they went further on, they being the captives, or the American Indian, or whoever these tribe that they supposedly enslaving, and they went further on, they met with other boats. They're talking about, we go back up. These Negroes saw that those in the ships were men and made haste to flee in their boats. Okay? Let's go back up here where it's telling you what they used. Let's highlight it. They're talking about right here. Well, okay? Let's go and highlight it so we can read. Excuse me. And it says, after reasoning, thus conserving the novelty, four of them, and who are they talking about? These Negroes, right? That these alleged Africans, but they're not Africans, right? These Negroes, four of them were bold enough to inform themselves concerning this doubt, and so got into small boats made out of one hollow tree trunk. That's funny, because let's see what boats the American Indians made. Now, we all know that American Indians made canoes, right? These boats, right? Canoes, American Indians made. Okay? Just wanted to give tree trunk boat, right? So this is what that would have looked like. We know canoes is something that American Indian boats. I'm just saying, canoes. American Indian boats. Look familiar? Canoes. Let's go back to our read. We gonna use their stuff to disprove them. And after reasoning concerning the novelty, 4 of them were bold enough to inform themselves concerning this doubt. All right, sorry y'all if I'm touching the screen and making it do too much. All right, without anything else being added thereto. And they came a good way, okay, towards the caravel, which is the ship that the Portuguese were on, was pursuing it of its course, and those in her could not restrain themselves from appearing on deck. But when the Negroes, right, that word that wasn't used until 1550, and this book being written in 1450, make it make sense, saw that those ships were full with men, basically, they hasted to flee. They got down out of the ship. In the caravel, those Portuguese ship tried to follow them, right? It says, and though the caravel followed the what? The canoes that the people were in, the little boats that the people, that the captive, or these, they couldn't be captives because they made boats. So they had to be inland people, inland, that's in this land. These people made canoes and sailed up to these ships to see what was on board, just for y'all to understand what is being read. And the people, the inland people from that land, got on a ship and saw all these Portuguese on that ship, all these men, and they hopped down, got back into their boat, and they started to flee from the Portuguese vessel, which is called the caravel. The caravel, the Portuguese ship, followed after them and went and follow after them. The want of sufficient wind, all right, because there was so much wind, prevented their capture. So the wind prevented the Portuguese from being able to capture these natives, these aboriginals. It prevented them from capturing them, right? And they, okay, and then they put Portuguese right here. This is false, because what I'm about to read will show you that they're not talking about the Portuguese. And then as they went further on, they met with other boats, not ships now. They let you know 1 minute ago it was ships, whose crew seeing ours. So it's the Portuguese that's writing, not the not the aboriginals of whatever land they're on, right? Do you understand? I hope I'm not confusing nobody. So who's writing this book is the Portuguese. The Portuguese is letting you know what the aboriginals of that land is doing. And the aboriginals, and they went further on and they met with other boats. So these inland aboriginals met with other boats whose crews, so these other aboriginals had crews, seeing the Portuguese to be men, were alarmed at the novelty of the sight, and moved by fear, they sought to flee. So these aboriginals ran, moved by fear, seeing all the men in that ship. They was like, there's men in that ship, let's go. So they, in their little boats, or they boats, however big it was, they dipped, they fled, each and all. See how they lied to you and said it was the Portuguese that got scared? That's a lie. They put this here. This lets you know, anytime you start seeing these little quotes, this is an add-on. They make up the story, not changing anything, but adding things to be confused. I'm telling you, they do this in these books. Y'all ought to be careful what y'all reading, because some of this stuff be lies, and they try to change a book and make it look a certain way. It wasn't the Portuguese. Mind you, they told you the Negro got upon the ship of the Portuguese, and then got down, got back into their boat, met with the crew. Not the Portuguese didn't get nobody's ship. It was the Negroes who got in their ship. You read that. And then they got scared because they seen all the men and they knew something wasn't right. And so they got with the other aboriginals of that land, and they was like, there's nothing but men on that ship. And they got all together, they cruised in their boats, and they fled out of fear of the Portuguese. Each and all. But because our men had better opportunity than before, they captured 4 of them. Look at that small number. They captured 4 of them. And these were the first to be taken by the Christians in their own land. And there is no chronicle or history that relateth aught to the contrary. And for certain, this was no small honor for our prince. We don't know if it was Henry. That's also an add-on. So we're not going to do that. Because anytime we see these boxes now, we know they fully. So we going to just say prince. And for certain, this was no small honor for our prince, who mighty power was thus sufficient to command people so far from our kingdom, making booty, captives, among the neighbors of the land of Egypt. Okay, so they're neighbors of the land of Egypt, right? Whatever that means. And again, remember, Egypt used to be the whole. Let's Google it. Let's Google it. I'll come back. So I asked Google because, of course, everybody use Google. So you know how this says that it neighbors Egypt? So it says, and for certain this was no small honor for the prince, whose mighty power was thus sufficient to command people so far from our kingdom, making booty among the neighbors of the land of Egypt. Denis Diaz ought to share. I just wanted this. Yes, I Google like this in this honor, for he was the first who, by his prince, we don't know if it's Henry, they be lying, captured Moors in the land. Okay, Moors. Who said that Moors came from Africa? But going back up, neighbors of the land of Egypt. Well, we already just seen, you saw my search, because I asked specific questions for specific reasons. No, Guinea does not border Egypt. It doesn't neighbor it, right? That was what we asked. Does Guinea neighbor Egypt? So they could not have been in Guinea because it doesn't neighbor Egypt. In the North Africa, Guinea shares borders with Senegal, Mali, Busua, all these, Liberia, Sierra Leone. It's funny because that's where America founded Liberia, was by bringing people of color, so-called free people of color, and that's how Liberia is founded. Sierra Leone and Cape Verde was Cabo Verde, however you call that, was Sierra Leone was also funded by the Portuguese, bringing American Indians to that land. But let's go back. Let's go and finish reading what they're talking about. Right? So we already found them in a couple of lies. So neighbors of the land of Egypt. That's false. And Denis Diaz, we're going to look him up, ought to share in this honor, for he was the first who captured Moors. And because we going, any of these quotes, we ain't going to even believe in. So by his print, we ain't none of that. That's fake. We're going to read it from what it is without any of those quotes and add it on stuff. Denis Diaz ought to share in those honors, for he was the first who captured Moors in the land. And now he pushed on till he arrived at Great Cape, to which they gave the name Cape Verde. Now, they tell you Cape Verde, this don't make sense. They tell you Cape Verde was inhabited. So everybody said, hold on, let's Google about what they say about Cape Verde. So remember how I said they talking about all these inland people, and they tell you that Cape Verde was not habited land before the arrival of the Portuguese explorers. So where the hell are these people? Because first of all, they told you in this article, in this book, allegedly, they told you that they were neighboring Egypt, but we found that Guinea, however you say that, don't neighbor Egypt. They also told you that the land was inhabited, right? We just read that. Well, not in this book, but we just Googled that the land of Cape Verde, and we heard this before if you read about Cape Verde, that it wasn't inhabited land, and that the Portuguese established the land with enslaved Africans. So we're already finding out that this story is contradicting the history of Cape Verde, which was said to be uninhabited land. But clearly in this book, it's telling you, let's go up, that as troublesomely, these finished the partition. For besides the toil with the captives, so they had captive, the field was quite full. So the field was full of people, right? Both from the town, what town if it was inhabited, and from the surrounding villages. What surrounding villages if Cape Verde, right? If Cape Verde was uninhabited, what surrounding villages and districts who were from the day gave rest to the hands, whatever, right? If this was uninhabitable lands, what other people, why are we talking about villages? And these people had to have been there for a long while because they were able to make boats, right? Here we go. Inform themselves concerning the doubt as small boats made out of hollow tree trunks. So not only did these people have villages, crews, and boats, they had a whole town there. But I thought they said Cape Verde was uninhabited. Hold on, we finding too many discrepancies now. Come on, this is contradicting. That's why when you tell a lie, there's certain things that when you tell a lie, there are certain things those lies are always going to contradict truth. Always. And you're going to be able to prove without a shadow of a doubt that this is a lie, right? So far we found too many lies. We found out that Cape Verde, they can't be in Cape Verde. Cape Verde has, and mind you, this book is written in the 1450s, right? So they got inland people, tribes, cities. They got people that's in boats and all this stuff that made boats from hollow trees, right? They said it's the making booty captives among the neighbors of the land of Egypt. Now we found out that Guinea don't neighbor no Egypt, right? Okay, and they captured Moors. Now we know that they call Indians Moors as well. All right, so we're going to do this. Are Moorish Americans? What kind of people do live in South America? The Spanish, South America now, y'all. Mind you, South America is at the lowest hemisphere as well. The Spanish and the Portuguese, but chiefly descendants of, you heard that? Moorish American. What kind of people do live in South America? The Spanish, the Portuguese, but chiefly the descendants of these European races, who have intermarried with the Indians. They're letting you know that Moorish people aren't even African, right? Where do you see African? They say, what kind of people do live in South America? The Spanish, the Portuguese, but chiefly the descendants of these Europeans, descendants of European races who have intermarried with the Indians. These are the Moorish people. Remember, they saying these Portuguese and these Spanish, they captured Moors. Other nations have made lesser contribution. Brazil, which is only a few days by steamboats from West Africa. That's conjecture. We don't know that. And 1/3 Negro. Again, conjecture. How can you tell whether or not somebody 1/3 of a Negro? Make that make sense. Okay, and this is the crudest type of Negro on the American hemisphere. There is a strong mark of Moor upon the Spaniard. The Arabic Moor wrought his customs very deeply into the life of Spain. The people of Mexico and Cuba might be called Moorish Americans rather than Latin Americans. The custom, manners, and heart experience in these people of Latin America. So they letting you know in 1621 the word Indian was substituted for Moorish. Somebody wrote that. Right? So we just wanted to understand what Moorish meant, or Moors, because Indians were considered Moors. We hear that this is an article, and this article was written, so of course they're going to try to associate Africans with it, right? They always do that shit. Virginian passed to act in 1682 that combined Native Americans and Africans. There's no proof. This is a conjecture, right? Nobody knows who, none of that. Africans, Americans, then they allegedly, Americans are white. This is shit is, you see this bullshit? Okay, Giano di Verrazano, Voyage. Okay, this is who we supposed to be reading right now. His voyage. Okay, recorded a letter of Francis, first king of France, July 8th. Remember, that's what we reading. Now, remember how it said, see, look at this. Let's go back up to the book. Let's go back. Because remember, this says king, what does it say? This says, later French, the king of France, right? Please note the description of the natives. They are dark in color. They're not unlike the Ethiopians, with the thick black hair not very long, tied back behind their head like small tails. For the physique of these, they are well proportioned, medium in height, little taller than we are. They have broad chests, strong legs, and part body as well. Okay, and they're talking about the Indians here, but they had that same description in the book. In this book that I'm reading right now, allegedly of the voyage, that they have, that these, I'm sorry if I'm long-winded. This is going to be long, y'all, because we reading. So y'all going to have to just stay tuned and just pay attention, because nothing is quick all the time. Okay? So again, they're talking about the King of France, Prince Henry. Now, I'm not going, this is, again, these are add-ons. All right? Now pushes till the arrival, and they're talking about how they enslave these Moors in the land, and now he pushes till he arrived to Great Cape, that they gave the name to Cape Verde. That's what they, Great Cape is what they gave the name to Cape Verde. Okay, this is just the second part, so we need to get the full book because we want to read this whole thing. So y'all, this is Kendra with Truest TV. We're gonna stop right here, but we're gonna get the full book, and then we're gonna read the second part. All right, guys. This is Kendra with Truest TV. Stay up, stay blessed. Put God first above all else. Peace out. Bye.